Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 15 of the Chalk Dinosaur podcast. On today's episode, we've got a very special guest. His name's Paul Guarino. He's one of the founders and owners of Ascend. Ascend is a rock climbing gym in the south side, near where I live. And I got to know Paul through music initially, and then got into climbing and wanted to talk to him today about his experience starting that business and running that business, and as a fellow entrepreneur in a kind of a different industry, but I was just interested to hear what that experience was like from conception to execution. But also we end up getting into a lot of music stuff, and learned a lot about Paul's musical background and stuff like that. Lots of stuff that I ended up forgetting to get to. We'll have to have another episode with Paul where we can get more into the details that we missed today. But it was a long conversation, and hope you guys enjoy getting a little more detailed view of one of the people behind Ascend, which is such a great place in Southside. I really love being there. The people that are there, and just the atmosphere of it is really like uplifting to me. And I really like being there. I like the people there, and they're all very passionate about what they do, and you can definitely tell by the way they run things at Ascend. And if you're interested in climbing or just fitness, I would highly recommend it. And I'm going to be playing the music at their members party on March 14th, I think. It's a Saturday. Is that right? March 14th. Sorry, I got to check this out. Yeah, Saturday, next Saturday. It's kind of become a fun outlet for me to kind of share my music, and that's cool that they're into letting me do that. So without further ado, whatever that means, here's my discussion with Paul. Always really awkward for me to start these.
Yeah, I've never actually heard or seen your podcast before. I've seen like clips on Instagram.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like...
So I'm really going into this pretty blind, which is pretty exciting. Okay. I feel like I could ask you a whole bunch of questions about your podcast and what we're doing here. That's
kind of like... I'd like it to be more kind of conversational.
Sure.
And, also talk about the things that the questions I had, but...
I've prepared statements. No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding. I have nothing prepared.
I mean, I've tried that sometimes, and it works sometimes, like for like what I'm trying to say during a podcast. But a lot of times, like the conversation ends up, things come up during it that
for sure
definitely want to follow those.
I just did. So I feel like I've reached a new level in my professionalism. This is the second podcast interview I've done in like a week and a half. So
really? What was the first one?
It was for the Climbing Advocate podcast, which is run by the Access Fund, which is like a nonprofit climbing advocacy group. And so I can go in a little bit more detail about it, but it was just kind of funny that you reached out to me like right after this other guy did, and I was like, well, I've got like a bunch of podcasts lined up.
Nice.
But yeah, he said the same thing. He's like, it's a newer podcast too for him. He's only been doing it for maybe a year. He's like, I used to do like scripted stuff, and it just sounded so scripted. And so now I just kind of wing it. Like he's like, I have a couple of bullets that I want to touch on, and that's about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fun though, because I kind of get to talk to people about stuff I, want to talk to them about, and then don't always, have the the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. What is the I guess like the mission or the idea behind your podcast? Just to do what you said, just to talk and have fun. And
there's a couple reasons. One of them is like as a consumer of podcasts, I just like really like hearing people kind of go into more detail about what they do and like how they approach what they do. So I wanted to do that and kind of like provide like more depth to a listener. Like if someone listens to the music and they want to kind of want to get to know more, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Kind of a way for like whenever I listen to podcasts, it really gives me a better sense of like knowing a person
right.
who's talking. That's not, yeah. And then, also just because I feel like I have a lot of friends and know a lot of people that do interesting stuff, and it, I kind of just wanted to kind of get their take on how they do what they do and approach that. And also, it's kind of like I feel like it'll be interesting to listen to in like 10 years.
Right.
Like just like a little snapshot of like what's going on in life right now.
In your life and in Pittsburgh. And
yeah.
I think it's definitely a cool opportunity. You do have the opportunity to meet and work with a bunch of people in your line of work. So it's why not kind of share their stories and alongside sharing your own. So it sounds like a good blend for you.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, trying to get comfortable, I guess, with doing it, I guess. But it's so like free, I guess, such a free kind of format.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, which is different because usually, when I record anything, it's usually doing a bunch of takes and like trying to get something really specific. So
should we go back and start this all over again?
Yeah, we should probably address.
Hello, my name is
address the millions of viewers and listeners out there. That this is episode 15.
Okay.
I'm with Paul.
That's me.
Guarino, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Guarino.
Paul Guarino, who's the one of the owners and founders of Ascend, which is a climbing gym in Southside. There it is, yeah. And I met Paul initially through music, and then have just been climbing at the gym a whole bunch and getting to know him through that. And I wanted to talk to him today about Ascend and kind of how that all happened.
It happened. Yeah, it was a thing.
Like that opened up in 2017?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, March of 2017. So we're coming up just a few weeks short of our 3-year anniversary.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. So like, how long did it take you? What was like the progression from like when you initially kind of had the idea that you wanted to do this to when it opened?
Sure. So my good friend Alex Bernstein, who you also know now, and so he actually approached me about, let's call it 2011, I think. I worked at the Harris Grill in the Shady Side, which is currently in ashes, hopefully being rebuilt. But I worked there, and I was getting a little burned out on the restaurant life, and had an MBA, had a marketing degree, and was bartending and restaurant managing, which was great. But I was like, maybe I should do something with my degree. And I was about to quit and like move out west and rock climb and try and get a job with like an outdoor retailer. And Alex approached me. I kind of went on like if I recall correctly, like kind of a drunken rant about that one night, like at a party. I was like, I'm done. Like I need to make some changes. And we went climbing the next day, and he approached me and said, I've had this idea for a while. He had just dropped out of grad school, I think, or he was kind of in a transition period himself. And so he said, my mom and I actually had this idea 2 years ago to open up a modern climbing facility in Pittsburgh. Would you like to do that with me? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And he and I climbed all the time at the climbing wall in Pittsburgh, along with all of our friends. And then, so he and I really just spent a good while, like a year maybe, writing a business plan. I mean, like really starting literally from scratch. We had no idea that there were companies that built the walls. Our wall was built by a company called Walltopia. There's like 10 other competitors of theirs. Mm-hmm. So we learned so much. We had no money. We had no property. We knew there was interest, and we knew that Pittsburgh could host a climbing facility outside of what was already here, which was the climbing wall and Climb North. We just had no idea how to do it. And then about a year in that process, we linked up with our other friend, who's now our third co-owner of Ascend, Aaron Gilmore. He was currently, at the time, he was a route setter at the climbing wall. And so the three of us just kind of started piece by piece over the next 5 to 6 years before we were able to finally find a space, find the funding, and make it happen. So it took a lot of time. Real estate was far and away the hardest thing to lock
Trying to
down.
find the right spot.
Yeah, we lost 3 leases midway.
Oh,
so we made a big announcement in 2014, and we still have stickers that say coming 2014.
Oh no!
And we kind of made a big splash on online, and then we were supposed to sign the lease, I think, on September 4th of 2014, and the landlord bailed like 2 days later, or 2 days prior. So we were just kind of stuck.
Crushing.
Yeah, and then we found another space in the south side down towards Station Square, and it needed a lot of work. We made a lot of progress with planning that space, and then we found out that it was in a 100-year flood zone, and it was going to cost like $8 million for us or the landlord to basically ready the property for redevelopment. So that got squashed. And so then when we walked into our space that we currently occupy in the south side, I've told the story a bunch, but we almost didn't take, our real estate agent was like, it's 23 foot high, second floor space. We were like, we were really set on tall walls, 45 feet or higher. That was our dream, still is our dream, which happy to talk more about later. But, we were just like, I don't know, we didn't want a bouldering facility at first. We really wanted to lead, our product with tall walls. It was what we wanted, is what we thought our customers wanted. But when we walked into this space, which you're pretty familiar with now, it was hard to say no. With the panoramic views of the city, I mean, we were just like, this is a perfect space for a bouldering gym. So we got to work and got to building, and had a great landlord. He was a big part of the puzzle, because we were kind of undercapitalized, and no one, we're young people, and climbing is weird. People are like, I don't know, like, is it really a thing? Is it just a fad? And so we had to get a lot of buy-in, and here we are though.
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Yeah. I mean, we worked really hard at it, and I think what we realized midway, I'd say, is that really people were buying into us, and more than like the numbers in the business plan. I mean, we needed some investors and like banks and whatnot wanted to see the numbers, but we had a conversation early on with one banker that was like, year 3 doesn't look that strong in your projections, and then he was like, you can just change it to make it look better. And we were like, okay. And so we kind of realized, like, this is all made up. We have no idea what the projections are going to be. So we shifted focus and really selling kind of ourselves and our vision and our passion. And simultaneously, climbing has just continued to get more popular, like in the mainstream.
For sure.
So people were starting to be like, oh yeah, like my son climbs at a gym in Michigan or whatever. And it became a little bit easier. We really started to hone in on cities that were like Pittsburgh, that had 2, 3, 4, or 5 facilities. St. Louis was a big one for us. Where similar population, Rust Belt, kind of like suffering, financial markets, like coming out of that, like Pittsburgh is, and they have 5 climbing gyms, and people were like, whoa, cool. So,
interesting, So that's kind of how you kind of figured what the demand might be, or did you just have an idea of what that was like in the Pittsburgh area specifically, based on like, because you guys climbed a lot, prior. I'm assuming. We based a lot of our projections off of what we knew, what we thought Pittsburgh could handle. Our main perspective was the climbing wall. We climbed there for 8-9 years. That place had been there, still there since 1994. It was, the only thing we knew is that we knew every climber, in Pittsburgh. Climb North is another gym about 40 minutes north of the city that has it's much smaller though, but it has a strong climbing community. We would climb at the New River Gorge and at Seneca. So we just kind of like, it was a lot of gut feeling, blended with national trends. The difficult thing was that
the climbing industry still to this day is all privately held. Like there's no public companies. So we made friends along the way. One of the gyms in St. Louis, Climb So Ill, they also have like the clothing brand So Ill. They were really helpful and forthcoming. There was another gym in Colorado called City Rock.
Is that in Colorado Springs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay. Yeah, the owners were just... I mean, most owners of gyms were like willing to have a conversation.
Yeah.
These two gyms, and I think a couple others, I'm just forgetting now, were really open to like, City Rock just gave us their financials. And they were like, we understand, and we want the community to open up, and we need to learn from each other. Like this community is growing nationally. Great. Yeah. So, it was, and then we paid some consulting companies too as well, like in the climbing industry, to kind of like look at our numbers and be like, does this make sense?
Yeah.
We definitely presented a very like conservative picture. I mean, we had to. We were like, X amount of members by this date and this kind of revenue, and it was all based off of like what we thought was really attainable.
Yeah.
And it's we have been successful, so it's been like a pretty exciting couple of years. And I don't think any of us were prepared for the level of business that we're currently experiencing.
Oh yeah.
Climbing is just, because then you have like the movie Free Solo and all these things in climbing. Yeah. Climbing's going to be in the Olympics now.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff just happened like since in the last 3 years for sure.
It's hard to separate. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like what we're doing, on our own merits versus just like what's happening to us, like with people like, seeing climbing on movies now and TV and just coming to us. So like, we try and do the best that we can do, put out the best product that we can put out, provide the best climbing amenities and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we've also just been met with this like peak time of climbing, where just like people are knocking on the door to come climb. And we're like, man, we could be offering the worst product ever, and they're still going to be coming right now. So we're trying to like, keep that,
It's definitely a fortunate meeting of your opening and. Mm-hmm. Also the rise of mainstream media, like kind of putting more climbing stuff out. But definitely you guys have a really awesome space, and you offer so many things aside from just climbing.
And that wasn't always part of the plan either.
Yeah, like that.
I mean, it kind of was, but not like it is now.
And you guys are always changing the routes, and like it's a very stimulating place to be. And I'm there a lot, so it's not a place that kind of, I don't know, it's a place I want to come back to.
Yeah. Me too. I'm sorry. I mean, I climb there 4 days a week with my wife and my friends, and I work there, and I live a block away. So like, and I'm not bored yet,
Did you live there before?
No.
Okay, so you moved there after Ascend? Yeah.
My wife and I lived in Bloomfield and Friendship for like 10 years, first as friends and then married. And then we both went to Duquesne. So Crystal lived in the South Side. I lived in like Uptown. We partied in the South Side in college. So when we left the South Side as like post undergrads, we were like, we're never going back to the South Side. Like it's a cesspool, like blah, 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 blah. And we're like, we're in the East End. We're like in the cool part of town. And then, after a year of commuting from Bloomfield, which isn't far, but we went down to one car. I would drive her to work every day. She works downtown. It just became kind of a nuisance. And I started to kind of add up the minutes to my day spending like commuting. And we also kind of wanted a bigger place. And so we just started looking around, and we like ignored the South Side. And then finally I was like, what about the South Side? And, we both like started thinking about it. And it's been an amazing move. I mean, and everything negative I just said about the South Side isn't true. It definitely has its party zones, as you know.
Yeah.
But I think where we live, because I live close to where we are right now, is just a little bit away from like the bar zone.
Yeah.
It's just like any other neighborhood in the city.
Had the same experience. Yeah, I was kind of a little bit scared because every time I'd talk about moving to the South Side, people would be like, ooh, like crazy.
You're gonna live above Jack's or something, and you're like,
no. And it was
yeah,
on the other side of the bridge, the Birmingham Bridge, it's super quiet.
Yeah. I can hear birds chirping outside your window right now.
Yeah, and there's hardly any foot traffic ever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. I love 24th Street.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I I tout it as our move as being one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Like it changed. I mean, I bought myself probably an hour a day, and Crystal still has to commute to work. But it's like, 20-minute bus ride. It's super convenient for her, as convenient as the bus can get. And I walk to work in 4 minutes. I can run home for lunch, and it's just the convenience. The older I get, the more I realize like how valuable my time is to me. And how I can kind of just, I have more time to climb, I have more time to sleep, I have more time to do the things I want to do, and put in the time at work too. So it's nice. I was nervous that it was going to be like too much ascend, like I'm too close to it, but it hasn't been that way at all. It's been really nice.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, affording yourself a little extra time through, eliminating that commute, and that probably takes some of the pressure off of, I don't know. I was curious about that too. Like how has your relationship with climbing evolved since you started this?
It's evolved. That's a great question, because I have kind of like a new answer now than I would have maybe 6 months ago. It was pretty easy for me to say like, oh, I'm climbing less outdoors because of Ascend. I'm so busy at Ascend. And I think I used that as a bit of a scapegoat unintentionally. And really, I think I climb all the time inside though. I'm a total gym rat. I do get outside occasionally, but 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I mean, I was out every single weekend at the New River Gorge. I was teaching how to climb for the Explorers Club of Pittsburgh. I spent so much time outside traveling, climbing.
Yeah.
It was my focus. So it was really easy for me to kind of, so when my friends were like, dude, you getting out this summer? I'm like, no,
You're right.
I'm busy with Ascend. And then I kind of realized like, well, that's stupid. Like everyone has a job, and this is really just a job. Sure, it's like a big job for me, but it's just a job. And so I was like, it's on me. Like if I really wanted to go out climbing more, I would make it happen. So, I kind of realized it's just part of getting older, part of my priorities changing. I still love climbing outside when I can with my friends. I just, I don't have the same goals as I used to.
Right.
I just, it used to be kind of a grind. You work, you get in the car, drive 3-4 hours somewhere, go to bed at 11, drink a couple of beers, wake up, climb all day, come home Sunday, unpack maybe Sunday night, and then you kind of repeat, and then you just, it becomes like work, And I have some friends that still do it and they love it. And I am, on one hand, I'm jealous of them. And the other hand, I'm like, I'm like so glad I don't do that anymore. But it is, I still love climbing a lot, obviously. It's just kind of evolved a little bit for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's as you're describing that, I'm thinking about playing indoors versus playing out of my doors. Playing in here and like making music in the studio versus going out on the weekends and playing.
Yeah,
which is
do you play less
fun,
now
but also
than you used to?
Grindy. No, I'd say last year it's been pretty steady. We've never done like a super heavy playing thing just because, I don't know. It's kind of just like, I'm very protective of my enjoyment of doing it. So I'm like maybe a little too worried about, wearing that out and like kind of having it turn into something that I don't really like to do that much, or I'm just like jaded or something.
I think you could also wear your fan base out too, That's
true.
This is maybe something to talk. I was in a band.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What did you play?
I played guitar and sang in a band in high school and college called Johnny Action. And we played a whole bunch of local shows for a couple of years, and you burn your fans out, I think sometimes, especially when you're that young and when you're not that good. And so your fans are mostly like your family and your friends. Yeah. They're like, another show? Cool. Like, and so not you guys are pretty prolific with the amount of music you put out, I feel, but still, I mean, when you're in a market,
definitely.
like if you played every weekend, I think people would be like, oh yeah, I just saw him last weekend, I'll go, so if you space it out, you're gonna get more hype. And
I know that is a really tricky part, and because playing, you learn so much through doing that, but at the same time, like, yeah, you only have so much music that you can play at any given time and so much music you can write in a certain amount of time. So, yeah, whenever I feel like I've definitely overplayed when I was trying to kind of get my feet wet with the playing, but, yeah, I would start to feel like guilty for playing the same songs and be like, oh man, these people have probably heard this song so many times.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I see a lot of music also like nationally and locally.
Yeah.
And you do kind of always like, I think we know that we're Lotus fans in common, and I go to a lot of Lotus shows, and sometimes I'm like, it was so amazing. And other times I'm like, it was kind of like the last show. But it's still good, but you make the choice to go and see it. And I think that live music experience is something that if you are a live music fan, you're going to go either way, and you ought to enjoy it, even if it is a little similar to the last one you saw.
Yeah.
But
I mean, a lot of people, that's what they want. You know, they want to hear the stuff that they know and that they like. And I have to think about that too sometimes. Like, maybe somebody wants to hear this song that we've played a bunch of times that I'm like, maybe we've played this song too many times. Yeah. But there might be people out there who are like, I hope I hear that song.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a question for you. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Cool. I've noticed that when I've seen you the last couple of years, you play largely, your shows are based off of the previous album you put out. And at least that's my take on it. Mm-hmm. I've seen like Star Blazer. It was like, when you played the next 3 or 4 times after you put that out, I was like, oh, he's playing mostly Star Blazer songs. And when I saw you like a few years before that, it was a lot of like flow state stuff. And And so I've seen you kind of do that. And I was wondering if it was, obviously I think it's a conscious choice, but I'm always intrigued with like setlist creation. That's the ultimate question here. And like because you have like a lot of music going back 10, 12, 13 years or something more, and I noticed at the show at the Thunderbird I saw you at a few months ago, you played like an old song, and I walked away, and this is not a critique at all, but I was like, I wish he did that more. Like I remember feeling like there's so many old songs that I love that I don't hear as often as I want to hear, but it might be because of
Do you know what song it was?
It was like a more acoustic song. I think it was a slower, like...
Was I singing?
You were singing.
Was it called West Virginia?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was.
I mean, that was the only song that could have been.
Yeah. You called it out as like, this is super old. And but then it just got me thinking about all not the super old, but kind of the middle old songs.
Yeah. It's tough. That's tough because, well, yeah, it's tough. It kind of part of it depends on like the personnel for the show. Like some of the shows are just me. Some of the shows like where the whole band's not available, it'll just be me and my brother. Right. And when it's that arrangement, there's a certain set of songs that like we know and we can play, and they're usually more like electronic, like from Flow State or Bounce or Sunset. We played some from that album. Right. And then there's been shows like last year at Summer Dance, our guitar player wasn't available, so it was just 3 of us. Yeah. And when it's just 3 of us, there's like a certain set of songs that like we can play as just 3 of us, and some stuff, and they all kind of have their own, like, we can play certain songs in each one that we can't play in the other ones, or that we just like haven't worked out.
I picture like this really complicated Venn diagram before, like when you guys are making a set list, like, okay, who's in, what songs are on the table, what do our fans want to hear, what venue chart. Like,
this is your set. And then as a full band, which is what ideally like we'd like to do the most of. It's kind of, it kind of follows who's available, I guess. And I'm like, cause like the last album I released, I didn't really have any plans for performing any of that stuff unless I was like, just like playing it like DJing or something. Right. Yeah. Just because they're all like very highly produced, like songs that like, I don't know. I'm just like not sure how I would play those yet.
Wouldn't translate like live necessarily, like with a band or, Yeah,
like I just inhaled a piece of gum.
Did you really? Is it gone?
It's gone.
Oh, that's amazing. Are you okay?
Yeah.
No Heimlich necessary, or
that was no. I was a little worried there for a second. I'm like, oh man, am I gonna
have you ever done that before?
Right now? No.
Do you, sticking on the gum conversation, do you ever play with gum in your mouth? Are you a gum chewer?
Yeah. Yeah.
But not when you're singing? Or maybe.
If I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crystal always climbs with gum in her mouth when she'll start her climbing session chewing gum, and I'm like, man, you were gonna choke, but she hasn't yet. But
man, I always thought I was immune to that, but it just happened.
Yeah,
but it went okay.
I'm glad it was on film and everything. I mean, you have evidence.
See if you can even tell when it happened. Just pause for a minute, just like.
You did have a weird look on your face, but I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just deep in thought.
Yeah, what were we talking about? Oh, the set list creation. Yeah, and then, okay, so a lot of times I feel like what I end up doing is making the set start with our slower stuff and then just like get faster and faster until the end. Mm-hmm. Just because sometimes it feels weird to like go slower again.
Yeah.
But if we play a long set, that's one where, like bring it back for a certain amount of time. And then there's kind of like sections of songs as a full band that we can extend or like compress depending on how much time we have.
Right. That's one of my, like, thinking about a couple of my favorite bands, Lotus being one, My Morning Jacket being the other. My Morning Jacket generally just plays their songs, but there's a couple songs where like they can extend, or they can kind of tweak and have fun
like
with.
One Big Holiday or something.
Yeah, but One Big Holiday, I feel like they just like they just play it straight down the middle. They don't extend
like the solo section.
They don't mess it around. They just, but like Don Dante, we were at Red Rocks and they played like a 27-minute long Don Dante, and it was awesome, right? But like Lotus is like so improv, right? Like you might get like a 2-minute hook and then 20 minutes of jam and then like a 2-minute ending and you're like, whoa, I forgot I was in that song. So it's, and I like both formats a lot personally, but for like totally different reasons. They're just
it's hard for me to for me to know too, like what is going on. That's something I asked I was talking to Michael Berger about, who's in the Clock Reeds.
Okay.
He's the bass player, and we were talking about that because I was curious how they did it, because they were really good at that. Like starting a song, going off into something completely different, and then like you've forgotten the song, and then it comes back to the song.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you guys do that, and how do you practice that? And he explained the two types of jams.
Yeah.
Like type 1, which is where everybody's like jamming over like a written groove or like chord progression of a song, and it stays on that. Really, it might change a little bit, but mostly just stays on that. And that's mostly what we do. Like it's mostly just like guitar soloing or something. And then there's type 2, which is where it just goes completely off the original idea,
like your Grateful Dead. Like
it might never come back,
right?
But you might or you might go into another song or something.
We saw Lotus at Stage AE December 27th, I think. I don't know if you were there or not. But.
No, that was this year.
Yeah.
I was there.
You were there. I
was not there for the show though. I was there to drop off a keyboard because Jesse bought one of my old keyboards.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No way. I think that was one of the best shows I'd seen of theirs in a while. But the thing I wanted to mention was we at the end of the first set, we were talking to the lighting guy who we're pretty close with now, Scotty Houston. You might hear us yelling, Scotty.
Oh, nice. I was just watching a video he posted about him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You see the video with the how the screen works.
Yeah, like the reactive.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
He had the Ascend hoodie on too.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, dude, you're repping the brand. But he. I was so psyched. I was like, dude, that set was awesome. And he's like, when's the last time you've heard Flower Sermon and Spiritualize in the same set? And I was like, I don't know, man. You tell me. And he's like, it's been a long time. But the thing that struck me as odd was that for a band as established as Lotus with when I'm at their shows, I'm like in the music and get kind of lost in it too. But I know that they know a lot more. They know what's going on, right? Like they've got cues and they've got times and set times to follow.
Right.
But they cut 2 songs off of that set, and Scotty was like, they just like really jammed longer than they ever than they thought we were going to. And I thought that was really weird, thinking like, oh, even Lotus, like, you know, maybe as structured as they might seem sometimes, like they had to cut 2 entire songs off their first set. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. And even Scott's like, yeah, it just happens sometimes.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
interesting. See, that's someone. Yeah, I would love to have that. Like, ask them that, because like, if I had to guess, I would have. Yeah, I don't know. Just like, it seems like everything they do is very intentional and like very deliberate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been curious, like, how much of the do they typically like to kind of explore during sets? Because for us, it's always kind of a balance between keeping it interesting for us and keeping the quality
sure.
Because like, we're not like the caliber of musicians who can just like go for a really long time and like have it all be interesting,
right?
And like good.
Well, you know, the late night summer dance set you were a part of, which I know wasn't Chalk Dinosaur. It was like a bunch of different musicians, right? Like the Clock Reeds.
It was me and my brother, and then Michael Berger. It was awesome. Shaq Nicholson,
but it was like
guys.
4 hours. Yeah, right. Like
that was all off the cuff.
Totally. Oh, I can tell, and it was great though. I mean, we even like left and came back, and I was like, man, this is still like, great. Because you guys just provided music for like 3-4 hours, which was cool. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like that's not Chalk Dinosaur's focus is to jam. You know, it's like you're capable of jamming, but that's not your main mission.
Right. I mean, that is like really fun to do, and that's like kind of how we started, was just all doing that. Like, and we recorded all of them, and like that's how we got a lot of our ideas for the songs that we ended up like writing into stuff. But it's just scary to take that risk, I guess, that it's not going to be good. But a lot of times, like the jams that we record, and there've been, hundreds of recordings that we have, and some of them get into really cool spots, but it might take like 10 minutes to get there.
Right.
So I don't know, I guess, we did that at Farm Jam a little bit. Have you ever been to that one?
I haven't, no.
That one's really fun.
Yeah?
It's super
That's
small.
PA, right? Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, it's in Brookville.
Okay.
Which is, it's like 2 hours northeast.
Okay. Oh, maybe I'll make it up this year. When is it normally?
It's 4th of July usually.
Okay. Like
weekend.
That weekend.
The weekend, yeah. And it's like a very small, like pretty much, it's a lot of Pittsburgh people. I think they cap it at like 1,000 people.
Oh wow, that is small.
Yeah.
Camping festival too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
it's like run by a couple. And they have this property and like a sweet barn that's like one of the coolest places to see concerts.
You play in the barn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and it's like quadraphonic sound, like there's speakers all around the top, and
neat.
like, there's no stage. It's just like people are just like in the barn.
Are you guys in the middle? Are people around you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And there's like couches and like lofts and stuff, and then there's like you could sit out front too. And then they make like the biggest fire I've ever seen, like on Saturday.
Like a bonfire night, like.
Yeah, they've got some kind of lumberyard connection, so they get like truckloads of scrap, like humongous pile. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
That sounds great. I'll definitely try and pencil it in, see if I can make it.
It's
we're going to a lot of festivals this summer already.
What are you doing?
Well, maybe that was not festivals, but we're going to see Lotus at the Caverns in May.
Have you been there?
No, I'm very excited. It's a 2-night run there. We bailed on Bonnaroo. We have some friends that are going to Bonnaroo. We went last year, and we went like 10 years ago.
It's an undertaking.
Yeah. the lineup this year is right up my alley. I was like, and we had already made the decision not to go. Mm-hmm. And because we went last year, and the lineup last year was okay. Like, it was good. I had a great time. But I was like, when I read it, I was like, cool. And then this year when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is so like every artist was, it was cool. We're going to Forecastle though.
Oh, cool.
Which I'd never been to.
Chicago?
No,
Detroit.
Louisville.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had never been, but a bunch of our close friends have gone maybe 3-4 times, and they just say it's a really well done. It's a non-camping like kind of city festival,
yeah.
but they're like it's just like top notch, like the service and the amenities and the sound and the stages and whatnot. So we're going to that. The lineup just got released, and again, like my gut reaction was like, oh, I'm not that psyched. Like I just being totally honest, I was like, I don't know as many. I don't know as many artists.
Yeah,
and I've been. My one friend, Shane, who's going, is like, dude, like, it's going to be the best time ever. Like, it doesn't matter who's playing. And I was like, no, you're right. Like, I go. And so I'm excited to see. I've been listening to a lot of artists already. There's, like, the Spotify playlist. And I'm like, there's going to definitely be some good stuff there.
That's some of the fun times, like, the fun of it, too, whenever you are surprised, like, by a band that you never heard of and you really like it.
Yeah.
That would happen a lot I feel like, at the Workout. I used to go to that festival in Ohio. That would happen.
Yeah. I'm more open to it now than ever before. I think I'm graduating in my live music experience to like being more open to never hearing something. I definitely do. I'm a creature of habit, and like I love my favorites, and I like my, if I can see a band that, because I listen to your music a lot, like I know it, so when I hear it live, I'm like, I know this, like I resonate with it, and the Lotus songs too, like when it's like a banger, I'm like, yes, the crowd goes nuts. Like I love that aspect of a show. I also really do, I grew up playing not great, but like jazz music in school, like in band. So I'm like, I kind of understand. I like the aspect of not knowing what's coming too. I think just finding that like happy medium when I'm at a show and at a big festival too. It's like, time is limited. There's 3 stages. Who do I go see?
Oh yeah, that's tough.
So just being able to walk up to anything and just start dancing and be like, this is great.
Yeah,
which is good.
I was always tough at Bonnaroo because it's such a big like campus.
Huge.
And there were a lot of kind of heartbreaking conflicts, I feel like, when I was there.
Yeah.
Of schedule, like having to make some tough choices.
I skipped. I regret this now in hindsight. Now it's on record officially. We skipped Jim James, and he's like one of my favorites, right? To go see Odessa, and I had seen Odessa before, but I had just seen Jim James. And it was him solo and not with My Morning Jacket. And so and the Odessa show was great. It was fine. It was a lot of fun. But then in hindsight I was like, man, like, cuz I had basically seen that show. It was a similar kind of drumline, similar set to when we saw them at Electric Forest the year prior.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, it was awesome. I've no real like true regrets.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I kind of wait. And then I went to see My Morning Jacket later in the summer last year, and people were like, did you see his Bonnaroo set? And I was like, I can't believe, like, I say that I'm like, that My Morning Jacket's my favorite band, and I was such an idiot, and I went to like this, this young band at Odessa, and you make your choices and you have fun. But the stages are so far apart. I thought about trying to split my time, and I was just like, it's a 20-minute ordeal.
Right, yeah.
It's not even just like a walk. It's like you have to like, battle your way through
really
people.
Hope that you didn't forget anything at your campsite.
And so I just was like, no, I'm just going to commit to one and ride it out. And
Yeah, I definitely had some of those where I went to a different show than everybody else went to, and everybody was like, that show that you weren't at was like the best show in the world. But I had a good time at the shows I went to.
Right.
I think I like, it was right at kind of when I was being exposed to all the like jam band and electronic types of music. Because before that it was all very like indie rock was what I was listening to. So I think I ended up going to Major Lazer.
Oh yeah.
And my friends went to, I forget what it was, like more of a jam. It might have been Humphreys McGee. It was something big.
I feel like you made the right choice.
It was
no disrespect to Humphreys. Like that's
Well, at the time, I was getting pretty interested in producing music and like electronic music, but I hadn't really seen much of it, and it was super fun.
Yeah.
That was like I had a really great time at that. And then, since then I've seen Humphreys a lot of times.
Sure, yeah.
So it all worked out.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. You're probably like, I know I can see them more often. Like they tour more.
I really didn't know anything about them at the time. Like
Humphreys or
Humphreys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Major Lazer, really.
Sure, right.
I mean, I had heard
it's
like
going to be good either way.
just kind of was wandering around and going towards the sounds that like sounded more interesting to me. Because you can kind of like hear stuff going on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of just go to one, and if it wasn't like, I guess like keeping my attention, then I'd just keep walking.
Yeah.
Also just like wandering around at those places.
The people watching is like endless. You just like, whoa, look at everything that's happening. You mentioned music that you used to be into. I'm going to see a bucket list. I'm actually going to see a couple of bucket list artists this year for me. One of them is Vampire Weekend, just because I've never seen them before, and they like never tour. They're coming to Pittsburgh, so I was like, I have to see them.
When's that?
June 6th, I think. The Stage AE Outdoor. That's also just a good venue to see.
It's like 2006.
Yeah.
Prime time.
Yeah. And then Rage Against the Machine. Very excited about. I was into them in a big way as a youth, and like don't listen to them. They don't put out any music anymore, and I generally don't listen to like hard rock anymore. But when I saw they were playing Coachella, like my friend James and I were like, maybe should we do that? Like, 'cause that's like a crazy idea, like to go see like this epic band that hasn't played in a long time, and turns out they're doing this like worldwide tour, so they're coming to Pittsburgh, and I'm pretty excited about that. We had this big discussion of mosh, like pit or no pit, and now that I'm 35, I opted for no pit. My one friend tells like a horror story. He's like, and he's like kind of a big dude too. And he's like, I was against the rail, just like almost died for like an hour straight. And I was like, I don't want that, but I do want to see it from like 30 feet back.
Right.
I want to see the crowd
on the fringes of that.
Yeah.
Like,
I was like, that doesn't sound good. Because I used to be into like Deftones and like a lot of that style, like back in the day. And I was like, I was in the mosh pit, and I was like a kind of a small dude. I like always just went to the Warped Tour every year, got like just beat up. And I hated it because I was just I'm not like a fighter. I was like, no. But I wanted to see the band, so I could try and get up close, but it was like always a hard thing. With jam bands, it's a bit easier. I can kind of like dance my way up front. Yeah. Like, hey, what's up, man? Yeah,
it's a very, very different crowd experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if someone's like pushing me, I'm like, come on, man. Like, come on, know your space.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
A lot of people, I feel like there's a lot of excitement for that show.
Yeah.
The Rage Against the Machine show.
They had a big impact, I think, on like an entire generation,
Yeah,
I don't know,
a lot of big fans. It's a band that I haven't really explored or listened to much of, but would be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of their music just from back, in high school pretty much, but I think the live experience is going to be pretty insane. Like the energy. My one friend saw them it was Wu-Tang and Rage in like 1999. He's a few years older than me, and he was like, he's like, to this day, and he's seen thousands of shows. He's like, to this day, he's like, it was like, it wasn't a riot, but it felt like a riot. He's like, the energy was insane. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like just like from a people standpoint of like, just to be in a space that like feels that alive, I'm like, that could be pretty neat.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where is it?
It's at Console.
Never seen a show there.
I've seen a couple. I'm going to see Roger Waters there, which is another kind of bucket list show. So I got a couple big shows this year.
That's
and that's like a 360 one. You made me think of that at the farm.
Yeah.
And so I was buying tickets, and then the floor seats were super expensive. So I was like, no way. But I got some good seats just up a little bit.
For Roger
Waters. Yeah, and it's like a 360. I'm excited to see what it'll do, because normally I saw Paul Simon there last year. I've seen a few shows there, and it's typically you're front on, kind of like half the arena or 3/4 of the arena. But
what's it like there? Like seeing a show there?
It's good. I mean, it's fine. I saw Radiohead. I was on the floor, and it was awesome. And it was just like any other show that you're just on the floor, like, and there's the band. When we saw Paul Simon, the first tickets we got. We were like in the nosebleeds, and I could barely even see the Jumbotron. Like, and I was like, what's happening? And my friend happened to run into these guys at the bar who gave him extra tickets, like way closer. So we went down, and we got maybe like 10 rows back off the pit, and it was really great.
Yeah,
that's where our Rage tickets are. It's just like a little bit back, and Roger Waters too. So I mean, I think it's a good venue. It's like
pretty tight about people going up to better seats.
Yeah, they are. They watch it, definitely. Yeah, it's not like my favorite venue. I mean, Smalls is my favorite venue in the city for sure. I love it.
Oh, man, it's different every time. It was even more.
They change it. They're adding a balcony, or like another balcony, or like
Yeah. I feel like
new
there was
bar.
there was another level than what I remember. I remember there being an upper level, but now there was another one that I don't remember. They took the sidebar out and like moved it to the back.
Did they? Yeah, they're always
There's like a
changing it.
cafe downstairs, which I guess I haven't been there in a while, but yeah, there was like a restaurant bar downstairs, like, and then I remember last time I didn't go up to this area, but when you go up to like the Funhouse area,
Yeah.
like,
There's another restaurant and bar up there too.
Yeah.
There's pizza and
it sounds, that's like, I feel like that it sounds the best in there.
I agree. Yeah, I think over the years it sounded better over the years.
Yeah.
I think they've invested a lot into it. I mean,
They have, yeah, I
It
was
has
looking.
the most like, I don't know, it just has a good feel. Like Stage AE is like clean. The dudes from Lotus, Evan and Scotty, the sound and the light guy, they said that Stage AE is like top 3 like best venues in terms of production. They were like, we roll in and like it's so well organized and it's so easy to work at. They're like, it's just like boom, we're done. Whereas a lot of other venues you gotta like, work at it a bit more. So
I can only imagine with all the stuff that you have to, if you're running your own sound and lights, like that blows my mind how they can set that up every night.
I know it seems like a lot, but yeah, I don't know. As a consumer, I love Smalls is just more fun. I haven't been to the newish venue yet in McKees Rocks. I'm blanking on.
Oh, the Roxy.
Roxy, yeah, I haven't been there. I've heard mixed things. I've heard great and meh.
That one's really good.
I think it depends on what show they've been to.
I would say in terms of sound, which is like kind of probably like, I mean, that's like one of the most important parts to me. Like Smalls has the clearest sound. Roxy's probably second. Stage AE outside sounds great.
Yeah.
Inside, I feel like a lot of times it sounds muddy. Like, or like I'm losing detail. Like I can't necessarily hear. It's like boomy or something. Like I can't hear as well like what's going on as I can when they have the shows outside and
I hear you.
No reverberation. But yeah, Smalls. Yeah, I was looking. They have a bunch of like acoustic treatment and panels everywhere in there, and it. I think you can tell.
The one thing that the Rex has that I wish every venue in the world had is just the sloped floor.
Yeah,
that's
the one thing they have. Yeah,
such a game changer when you're not tall and you're at a show. That's the one negative thing I've heard about the Roxy is like sometimes the viewing's hard. If you're short and you're like in the back, you can't see anything.
I was noticing that at Smalls because it was really crowded in there, and I was like, man, you would not be able to see like if you were standing behind someone.
When I saw Lotus there many years ago actually.
Was it when they played Nomad all the way through?
No, I did. I was at that show too, but this was after that. I had been a fan for a while now, but I was stuck in the back. And if my friend Shorty watches this, he'll laugh that I tell this story. But I couldn't see the stage because I was just like way far back. So I closed my eyes and just like listened, and it was like you always know like Rempel's a good guitar player. Like, everyone's like, oh, Rempel's amazing, and I'm like, yeah, Rempel's great. But then like that night I like became a fan of Rempel, like a real fan. I was like, because I just had to listen and I couldn't see anything that was happening. And the light show is so exciting. Like there's a lot going on at a Lotus show.
Oh, that's interesting.
I just focused in on the guitar the whole night, and I was like, man, he is good. Like, so yeah.
Never tried that. Yeah. Closed eye show experience.
I mean, not the whole time. I would have looked like I would have looked like but I was just like, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna enjoy it. I'm not gonna fight my way up front. All my friends were in the back, and
right. So you're really listening, more
good.
than kind of paying attention to the visuals. That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, my favorite Lotus shows were the ones I saw at Smalls when it was the Nomad, and then they played another night where they did a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah,
that's when I really got super into Nomad.
It's a great album.
Yeah,
some say it's their best.
I really like Germination too.
Yeah,
I mean, I like there's albums I still haven't heard yet.
Yeah,
they have a lot of albums.
They have a lot, and they have a lot of songs that aren't even on like an album. They're just live only.
Yeah,
and a couple of years ago, Crystal and I decided that we're gonna learn the Lotus songs because we'd been seeing them for years, and we're just always like. Still pretty pedestrian at like our knowledge of like their repertoire.
That one that's like
like we knew like Spiritualize and like we knew like 2 or 3 like names and we're like yeah. And so we committed, and before Summer Dance, maybe like a couple years ago, we listened to a lot of Lotus, and we would like quiz each other, like making dinner, like what song is this? Went way back, and I still have a long way to go. But my buddy Shorty, who is probably the biggest Lotus nerd that I know, he was their tour manager for a few years and went to college with them. Like he's like you're starting to learn. He's like you definitely know. Like I called, I think at the Pittsburgh show. And granted, it probably wasn't a hard set list for me to do this to, but I was able to name every song, like, and kind of be able to say, like, yeah, they segged into this and they did this jam.
Oh, man.
And he was like, dude, that was pretty good.
That's serious.
Yeah.
I cannot say I could do that for... I don't know if I could do that for any bands.
I wanted to... Well, I can definitely do it for My Morning Jacket, but for like a jam band, it's like a little bit harder, I think.
Right, if they kind of sneak
especially with no
something.
words, you know, or like very few words. So and having like a music background, I think helped a little bit because I could pick out like a little lick or like the drums do this. And I'm like,
right.
Oh, yeah, it's that.
Just
but
a little hint.
Yeah, but it's definitely... For me, it just makes the shows... better because I think it goes back to me saying like how I want to go to a festival and see the bands I know. It's like I want to go to a show and I want to know that I know the songs because then I can kind of like know what I'm hearing a little bit. So it helped in kind of I just feel more present at the show, I think. But
it's cool when you know what they're doing when they're like starting to kind of hint at something.
Yeah.
Then it's satisfying when they do what you think they're gonna do.
Yeah, no, it totally is. Like, yes.
Yeah, Lotus is a good like inspiration that like in instrumental music with no words and how, because a lot of times like you start to feel like the need to have words sometimes, like but it's good to know that there's a lot of people out there who like no words. Yeah. Or like prefer that.
Right.
Just as there are people there's probably more people who want words, but
yeah. I think you guys, I feel like you guys have a good blend in my I like that you have some songs where like you sing along and
in studio.
Yeah.
Like live we have like one song.
Really?
2 songs.
Yeah.
that have words.
I mean I like variety typically, so it's I'll get bored with sometimes with an artist where it's they come out and they play like I don't know, just like their hits and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, like I knew that. I mean it's cool, but like it's always more enjoyable for me when there's a little bit of variety. And I think some songs with words, some songs with not, so it's just and Lotus they do excel at that. So not to make this a Lotus podcast, you're gonna be super psyched with.
Well, how do you have all these ties? Like how did you meet the lighting guy?
Yeah, it is kind of all connected in a way. I worked at the Harris Grill in the Shady Side from 2007 to 2016, right before Ascend opened. And there I met some great friends of mine, Scott and Shorty and a number of other people, James, and they all went to college with Lotus. So from Goshen, Indiana, Goshen College, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, these guys all met at college. And so like Luke and Jesse and Mike and a couple of the founding members like were just, I think to my knowledge, like 18, 19-year-old college kids starting a jam band. And so, my friends kind of went in their college years, just saw them a lot in the early 2000s. And Shorty, Brian Short, known as Shorty, was their merch guy and then their tour manager. And then he moved to Pittsburgh I should know this, maybe 2010. And he and I became like really good friends. We closed at Harris every night. Like we bonded over music and over beer. And we just became really tight. And he got me into Lotus. And it turns out that Crystal was previously into, like, she was like, oh, I know Lotus. Like, cause I was like kind of newer to like the jam band world. And she's like more experienced in that, and she was like, oh, Lotus is great, I've seen them a bunch. And I was like, okay, well, I'm getting to know them now. So Shorty kind of got me into them in that way. And then just throughout the year, it started off just like, oh, Lotus is in town, I'm gonna go with everyone that knows. There's probably a group of 10 or 15 people that somehow all ended up in Pittsburgh that went to Goshen University and they kind of all coalesced in Pittsburgh, and we're all, good friends now. And so I would just go with them. I kind of tag along. And then over the years, I've just became a fan in my own right. And so at Summer Dance, really, that's where we started to meet the band more, because they would come to our campsite because they knew these were like their friends. They weren't just like fans. So we'd get to hang out with them. And at first we were really awkward and super weird about everything, but now it's pretty normal. And so we kind of forged some friendships with, everyone in the band really, but in particular, Evan, the sound guy, and Scott, the lighting guy, and Luke, is a climber too. So he and I bonded over climbing. He's come to Ascend a few times. And if you scroll his Instagram, you'll see that he climbs like in Colorado a lot. But yeah, it's kind of just how those worlds started to collide, and I guess that's about it.
That's interesting.
So, but now, Crystal's like, she said this a couple months ago, and I was like, she's like, I actually love Loaded. Like, they're like a band that I really, really, really like. And I was like, yeah, it started off as like, yeah, they're our friends band. Now I'm like, they're just like one of our favorite bands.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened that way.
Yeah, I'd love seeing them at Summer Dance too, just because of the setting and the amount of time they get to do different stuff. And
I love a 3-night. We saw MMJ a few times, 3-night runs. It's as like a super fan of these bands, it's the question, what are they going to play tonight, and how are they going to string it all together? It gets pretty exciting.
3 nights. Was that at? Where was that?
Summer Dance is 3 nights. Oh, My Morning Jacket, One Big Holiday. That's their like Caribbean. We've seen them in Mexico and then in Punta Cana 2 years ago, and they do a 3-night. They do 2 nights on, 1 night off, and then the closing night, and it's incredible.
Wow.
So
yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and 2 years ago they played every album in order from start to finish.
Oh my God.
Over 3 nights. It was like
Holy
7
cow.
albums, and they had done that before, maybe like, I don't know, before I was really into them. So it was a pretty unique treat. It didn't make for like the most amazing set list ever, but I think it felt right. Like it was cool that they did that. And it was like neat. But
where did you just come back from?
Tulum, Mexico. Just for a non-climbing, non-music vacation. I read a book, sat on the beach, ate and drank a lot of food. And rode bikes around. Yeah, it was just a nice kind of like beach trip. Yeah, it's a cool little town.
Tulum. Where is that?
It's like 2 hours south of Cancun. So you fly into Cancun and then just go straight down like past Riviera Maya. Yeah. We had visited there for like an afternoon years ago when we saw My Morning Jacket at the Hard Rock in Mexico in the Riviera Maya, and we spent like a day kind of traveling down there. There's like some Mayan ruins, there's beautiful beaches. So we just kind of wanted a nice like February beach trip to get out of gray Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I've been fantasizing about that a lot. It's I don't know, I think it's gonna be over soon though, so I might have run out of time.
I know. I think like February is a nice time to get out and do a beach trip. And since there was no One Big Holiday festival happening this year, we were like, well, let's just make our own little trip to the Caribbean.
It's usually in February or January.
February or March, yeah. I'm hoping for one next year. They're supposed to, My Morning Jacket, they're supposed to put out an album this year and like announce tour dates.
Oh,
and the fan base is just all a fervor. No one knows what's going to happen, but they haven't played. Last year they only played a handful of shows.
Definitely. Slowed down with the releases and the playing.
They were grinding it out though. I think like 2015 to 2018 they played a lot, and I think
before that too. Apparently, a lot of.
I don't blame them for.
I don't either.
Pumping the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, you know more than I do, but it seems like a lot.
And I only know not on the level of actually touring,
right?
Just like playing somewhat frequently, that it is pretty consuming. I could see how that would be. Would be wise to exercise some restraint if, could really burn you out if you didn't.
Yeah.
Weren't 100% really wanting to do that at the time.
Yeah, talking to the Lotus guys, I think recently figured it out where they don't tour as much like on the road. Like they'll play like weekend, or they'll do like 3 or 4 night runs in regions, and so they have more time with their families. They're not on the road all the time. So I think they figured that out a few years ago, and I think they have the fan base maybe to support it now. It might take a little bit longer.
Right.
And I think My Morning Jacket could absolutely do that.
Yeah,
where
I
they don't have
noticed.
to play club shows, you know,
Yeah.
on Wednesday nights and Columbus. Like they can just kind of pick a bit more. But
I noticed that. Yeah.
no offense to Columbus, they get better shows than Pittsburgh does half the time.
Just yeah, they didn't have Lotus. I was looking at their tour. It wasn't, you know, a huge list. It was just like, well, this was like last spring. I'm like, huh, they're like not playing that many more shows than we are.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, they're in a place where they can just play probably all awesome shows.
Yeah.
Same with, yeah. I guess that's what you can do when you have a big enough audience.
I guess so.
Playing like Wolfpack.
Yeah. Oh my God, they skyrocketed. It's amazing to see where they are now and where they were like 2 years ago.
Did you watch that Madison Square Garden?
No, I
video?
listened to part of it. No, I haven't. That was the recent-ish show, like in the last few months?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
It's like their biggest thing yet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was, yeah, crazy. That's like they've demonstrated like an alternative path that like, well, a couple of people have done it. Like Tycho's done that path where he built the demand through his content, and then when he started playing, like he didn't take hundreds and hundreds of shows to get to the point where he's at now. Well, at least I don't think it did. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was.
No, I think
he's working as a graphic designer or something, working a day job.
Yeah, I think that's my perception of Tycho's rise to fame as well. Yeah, it's amazing how some artists do that. And then like Lotus, like I mean they grind it out for you know 15 years before they were maybe able to have the dream tour that they can do now and support themselves and have creative time and all that, you know, side projects, AutoCAD and all that, you know. But
yeah, they do so much stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know.
I guess they're in a place where they can focus 100% on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
It's 11:30.
Cool. What do you want to do?
I mean, I could keep talking about that forever. I don't know. What do you want to do?
If you want to talk climbing, I can talk climbing. But yeah, I didn't expect to talk about. Actually, I did expect to talk about music a little bit.
That's good to know. Yeah,
this is really like the footnotes of this should focus on that about Lotus and My Morning Jacket. Really, we talked a lot about. Which, if anyone that knows me, they're gonna be like, "Oh, well, yeah, no shit, you just talked about them for the whole time."
No, that's an interesting story. Yeah, maybe. Okay, maybe just a real quick here. Talk about climbing.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm curious about what you did through your like how you progressed and with your skills.
Me as a climber.
Yeah.
Not as a business owner.
Right.
I started climbing in my mid 20s, like grad school, like 23, 24, I think. And a friend just kind of was like, you should come climbing. And I was like, okay. That was as simple as that. I went to the climbing wall with him and I was like just hooked. And before that, I was not like an athlete at all. I skateboarded and snowboarded when I was younger. I was a musician, honestly. Like that was my passion. I went to school for music but dropped out and transferred to business at Duquesne. And so I kind of stopped playing music, but I still really am into music. And I have said often that like I traded music for climbing, really. I got so into climbing when I got the bug bad. And I was just like, I bought shoes the next day. I got a membership. And then about 6 months in bouldering at the climbing wall, I found out about the group, the Explorers Club of Pittsburgh. And they have an annual learn to rock climb school outside. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I want to do that. So I took that school. It's like a 2-month school, I think maybe 2008 or so. And from that point on, I mean, it was just, I lived and breathed climbing. Indoors and outdoors. I learned how to sport climb outside. I learned how to top rope. I learned how to trad climb. I got really into outdoor climbing, and I was climbing in the gym 3-4 days a week with all my friends, trying to get really strong.
Yeah.
So for the first time in my life, like I felt like I had a reason to work out. Like I never worked out before. I was not like a gym kid.
Yeah.
So I got like really into not like lifting weights, but like cross training. I was like everything I learned how to, I not learned, but I started running. It was like all of a sudden I found myself like becoming physically fit, you know? And I was never like, I was just always like a skinny kind of scrawny kid. And I think I still am mostly, but, you know, that's just kind of that taught me, I guess, that physical fitness was something that I wanted in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And it took having this like passionate thing about, and that's kind of my sell, like to put on my like Ascend hat. Like that's my sell to like, why should I start rock climbing? And because I think a lot of people, that's their story too. It's not like an uncommon story.
Right.
They're like, oh, I was just kind of a nerd and like I didn't really fit in with, I didn't play group sports and, you know, I didn't really think I was an athlete. And then they start climbing and it's just, there's something about it that, you know, it's hard. It's like graduated step-by-step progression. It's kind of exciting, you know, like I don't like to say it's scary, but like it gets your adrenaline going.
Yeah.
It keeps you on your toes. And the thing the flow state, is a thing in climbing where like when you're on the wall, whether you're inside above comfortable pads or outside, you know, and there's a tiny little rope keeping you from hitting the ground, 200 feet up, you are just focused, you're laser focused on like what you're doing, your hands and your feet, your hips, your muscles. And so it's just a really good kind of like mental, exercise as well. So, you know, all those things combined, that's kind of my story. And then I just kept with it really. I taught that rock school for a while. I was the director of it for a couple of years. And then this whole Ascend thing started to happen. And, you know, now it's different, but now it's even more to me. You know, it's my family's livelihood. It's my community's kind of well-being. So, you know, it's, I remember when I will admit, and I don't like to admit this publicly, but I will, I was in the best shape of my life, climbing shape, before Ascend opened. So I can't say that Ascend like got me like super strong. I think that was a priority, but I had this in my head when we were opening Ascend. I had it in my head that I didn't want to be like a gym owner that like couldn't crush. I was like, I want to be like a rock climber. So I like put in a lot of work in those, you know, maybe 2015, 2016, and just like trained hard. And I was climbing really well. I was running like 20 miles a week. I was just like super fit, and I still am pretty fit. But it just like then all of a sudden like the first year of the business was really difficult, as they say, you know, just like I was working a lot, kind of like I had a couple of injuries, like my wrist hurt, you know, I got toe surgery last year. So I've just been kind of like battling these like minor injuries that have kept me at bay. But this past 6 months or so, I've been feeling like re-motivated to like set some climbing goals. I got really into running a few years ago too, which took part of that away. But I, you know, I ran like a couple half marathons and I climbed a lot, but more casually. And this past year, I've been thinking if I set myself a goal, like to climb X grade outside or whatever, whether it's a boulder or a sport climb, that might be good for me because then I'll like focus on it more and I'll kind of like stay a little more, because it's easy to be like, I'm not going to climb tonight, or I'm not going to go for that run.
Yeah,
but
kind of have like a target to kind of have steps that you know what to take. Yeah. Like how do you train? I guess at any point when you're trying to get to like a higher level.
Well, I forget what they call it, but there's this like bell curve, this climbing training bell curve. And generally I subscribe to this line of thinking that like when you're new at climbing, like maybe your first few years and you're climbing like V5 and below, you should focus just mostly purely on climbing. Like just climb. Don't train. Don't like train.
Yeah.
Like cross training is always good, like stability stuff, like prehab and rehab stuff, like being smart about what you're doing and not climbing to the point where you're hurting yourself. But like hangboarding, campusing, I wouldn't recommend those things early on. You could do your fingers and your wrists like a ton of damage. You do want to be careful though early on too of over climbing. Like you can get tendonitis and some other lingering issues, but climbing is like this skill specific sport where you have to learn, you just have to have this repertoire of moves and of like knowledge on the wall. But then you get to a point where, you know, the bell curve, I think when you hit like V6 or so, V6 to V9, you need strength. And so at that point, like trainers recommend, and this is kind of where I'm at now, where it's like, I know how to climb. My body, like I know how to make moves. Like I'm a pretty intuitive climber, but and when I can't do a move, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, I just don't have the strength.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not always true, but I know enough to be like, I can't just finesse that move.
Right.
So you'll see like some older climbers that are maybe like, 30 pounds overweight, haven't climbed in 10 years, and they're scampering up like a pretty hard rock climb. And they're like, well, they climbed 15 years before that and they know how to do it. So it's like, they're not strong, but they're smart,
Yeah.
And then as soon as they drop that weight and train for like 2 months, like boom, they crush and they're like, super strong. So there's like muscle memory is a big part of it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. There are times whenever I can't get a certain move, and my first thought is that it's because I don't have the strength. Like my hand just isn't strong enough. But yeah, sometimes it's like body positioning or something.
Yeah.
That makes the difference.
It's
I don't know what it is.
It's definitely both. I mean, I think it's both. Like, and the thing is, like, when you're new at climbing, you do need to get strong. Like, and that's where I think people think, like, oh, I need to train. I need to do pull-ups. I need to hang on my fingers.
You think just more climbing training.
You can do that when you're climbing. I think that's like, so Adam Andra, who's like arguably the world's, strongest climber, he didn't touch like a campus board or a hangboard, I think, until he was like 20, 21. And before that, he had won like world championships and, all this stuff. And he climbed 6 days a week. He just climbed. He made up problems. He would climb a route and he would take a hold off, or he would try and grab a hold this way instead of this way. And so he would just like. That's I think a lot of climbers. You need to know, but in doing so, you teach your body how to move, but then you also get strong. Yeah,
kind of the applied strength. Would you recommend doing? So climbing a lot at something easier, like lower intensity, higher volume.
I do recommend changing your days up. A lot of people think, and I agree with this, like you should have your project days and then kind of your training days. So I think you can still train. I think the word training is like nebulous. Like you can train. You're always kind of training, but
like on the wall. I guess.
Yeah, training on the wall. Like not like targeted training necessarily, but I think sometimes it's like I'll go into a week like with a plan, and other times I'll just kind of wing it. But if I'm trying to climb some harder problems and I'm just like getting shut down, I feel really weak, or I don't have a lot of power, I might shift gears mid-session and say like, oh, you know what, like I'm gonna dial back the difficulty and I'm gonna ramp up the volume. So, if I'm working on V5s or 6s and getting shut down, I'm like, oh man, everything, I feel achy and whatever. I might go back, get some like V2s and V3s and just try and crank out a bunch of volume.
Yeah.
Or even more so, like realize, oh, my skin hurts. Like I'm not gonna hurt myself. So I'm gonna go like do a core workout or something. And then there should be, I think, my friend Brian says that there should be like 1 day a week could be your project day. So if you were really looking to climb like hard, like intense boulders,
like to your limit kind of.
Yeah, limit bouldering. Like pick a couple that you're psyched on that are hard, but maybe that you think you can do like in a night, and then maybe in that same night pick a problem that you have no chance on, but like just try it. That's that's a huge thing that I think I have a mental barrier about that a lot of people do, is like you want to succeed, so you don't try things that are like out of your grade. But the more you do that, like the stronger you get, the better you get, and the more you realize that these far away grades like aren't as far away as maybe you think they are. It's really easy to see, a strong climber like climb like a white tag and be like, oh, that's impossible. And that's a V7 to V9 in our gym. Like that's impossible. I'd never be able to do that. And then you like try it and you're like, wait, I can do that one move in it. I can't do the rest of it, but I can do the one move in it. And all of a sudden it starts to just kind of teach you something. And you're like, okay, maybe I'll try another white circuit. Or maybe I'll try something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely, I've had the opposite whenever I try something that I feel like I won't be able to get, and then I see somebody do it, and it's like obviously a much more advanced climber, and they just like cruise up it, and they make it look so easy, and then I'll try it again, and well, well, obviously getting to see like what moves they did, but just like seeing somebody do it so smoothly.
Yeah.
There've been times when I've like gotten one after watching
Yeah.
someone else do it, where before like I didn't think I was going to be able to do that one, you know, after having failed at it.
That happens all the time. I think that's one of the coolest things about climbing, is that right there. And especially when you're in a group, call it a send train, like everyone's working on it. And then like one person gets it and then like boom, 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 everyone else gets it. And you're like, no one could get it earlier.
Yeah.
There is something, and then you weren't even necessarily doing something different. You just like, it's like seeing is believing.
Like,
You're
yeah.
like,
Believing like, hey, that's not that hard.
Yeah.
Or it didn't look
and then maybe subconsciously there's like little things you're like, oh yeah, like maybe I'll just drop my hip there, or
Right,
I'll
yeah.
hang a little bit more, and I'm not going to swing as much. And yeah, it's,
Yeah. And yeah, like it's probably, yeah, some of it's subconscious. It's usually not like it's happened in times when I'm not, yeah, like consciously like trying to follow each move, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're picking up all kinds of stuff when you're watching somebody do
Totally.
something.
I think it's important to break down what you're doing. Like, I think I think the goal for me is to be able to know and talk about what I'm doing on the wall, but eventually you don't need to actively think about it. So like
Yeah.
if I'm trying a hard problem for me, I might be working out the beta with a friend and be like, you know, and it's really like minute beta. Like, okay, I'm going to put, you know, my toe like in step instead of out step, or I'm going to drop my right hip down and then move my hand and then bring my right hip back up. And then, you know, like these tiny little things. And then you like start to piece it together. But then like the next week or like the next year, you're climbing a totally different problem, you know, and you just start to do those things naturally. You be able to read routes, like intuitively, and you just know. That's when you see a really good climber, you're just like, not only are they strong, but you're like, whoa, they're like dancing up the wall. Like they know, they totally understand their body, where they are at all times. It's like watching like a great gymnast or something. It's like pretty impressive.
Yeah. How much did you think about the intended beta, like the intended progression of steps to get up a wall? Because a lot of times I'm not sure if I'm doing that, but you know, I might get up a wall, you know, a route, but
It was a little sloppy.
yeah, I'm like not always thinking, I guess, as much about like what were the intended steps.
Yeah. I try and get in the route setters' heads. And my friend who's a route setter was like, sometimes you give us too much credit. But, you know, I'm like, there usually is an intended way. You know, they set these routes with really specific moves in mind. Not all the time, but generally that's their plan. So I try and seek out the intended way, generally because I think it's going to make the problem the easiest.
Right.
You know? Or not always necessarily. I think if it's good route setting, that's the case. Sometimes though, you'll like break the beta and be like, oh, if I just like do this, then like I skip that hard move, and I kind of like broke the problem a little bit in a way. But I mean, if you do find yourself climbing a route and you feel like you got to the top and you were like, whoa, that was like a mess, but I did it. You know, maybe next time you're back, try and do it more smoothly.
Yeah.
Crystal is training with our good friend Brian, who's a coach at Ascend, who's the head route setter at Ascend, and he always has her like, tell me why you made that move. Like they talk a lot, you know, and I think it's been really good for her because now she'll like look at a problem and be like, oh, cool, like I think I'm gonna put my left hand there first, and then you get on the wall and then you put your right hand there. She's like, you know, I thought wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a harder move, you know, and so I think going into a problem with the most knowledge that you can have, the better. But I really enjoy just sometimes hopping on a route and just kind of winging it. And the better you get, like the more possible that becomes, you know, you're like, you start to know, like you look 3 steps ahead, you're like, okay, definitely need my right hand there.
Yeah.
If I put my left hand there, I'm kind of screwed.
Yeah. I think I probably do an in-proportionate amount of that. Just like put my hands in the start and like see if I can get it to the top. But yeah, definitely sometimes try and plan out every move, but I guess it depends on the day.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, you can't, sometimes you're not always going to look at every route and be like, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do 100% of the way out.
That's what I'll do. Yeah.
But at least the start, maybe, you know,
Yeah.
be like,
I guess it depends on the difficulty of the the problem too. If
That's
it's like
true.
more towards my limit, then I'll try and figure out what I'm going to do before I get on, because
Right.
probably run out of energy like if I take too much time on it.
If it is more toward your limit, the technique is going to become even more important, you know, this, because you're gonna be hindered by your strength. But if you can climb it like smartly, then it's gonna go. You're gonna have a better shot at it, or the strength level is gonna be like reduced a little bit because you're gonna be in a better position, and so you're not just like gripping on for dear life. Like you're gripping pretty hard, but like you're set up better, so it's gonna feel a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, I wonder, like, whenever I'm still very much in the beginning, but I'm still like a lot better than I was when I started. And whenever I see people who are just starting, like, I'm seeing all the things that would make it easier if they did differently. So I'm always curious about like, what am I doing right now? And it's like,
well, because it's
like, it's so much easier if you like don't keep your arms like, you know, curled.
When you watch a brand new climber climb, and you've been climbing what, year and a half now, 2 years?
Yeah, like a year and a half.
Yeah, it's almost funny to be like, and this is no offense to anybody, but you know, like, it's like, whoa, how are you so bad at it? Like, it's like you just don't have control of your limbs. You watch like a brand new climber, you're like, whoa, this is, but then you remember like, oh, I was there. I remember just like gripping for dear life. But when you're a few years out and you see it and you're just like, oh, that's so bad. I can't believe they're doing it that way. Or like, you just want to help them. Like, no, just
straighten your arms.
Yeah, straighten your arms. Like, yeah. But you're right though. I think, that'll happen throughout your, you know, someone that climbs V10 is probably watching you be like, can't believe he's doing it that way. And so on and so forth, you know.
How much lunging should there really be any lunging in like V5 and below?
You mean like, what do you mean? Like,
having to, like, not being able to do like a slow controlled movement, like having to like lunge at something. I'm always curious about that sometimes, because there's some where I'm like, if somebody really good climbed this, would they? A lot of times they're just like able to kind of stay controlled through the whole thing.
It depends. I mean, I think you need to be dynamic sometimes and lunge and jump and go kind of explosively to your next move. But sometimes, you know, sometimes you have the choice, and sometimes you don't have the choice for either direction. So I think it's a hard it depends answer.
Yeah, right.
But I think the less in my earlier years of climbing, I was very jumpy. Like I could jump and like my feet would cut, I'd grab the hold, and it was like not that smooth, but I had the strength and kind of the power to like get around. And this guy, Alex Honnold, hit the scene. He's the free soloer guy. And I'd watch him climb, and you know, he's climbing really difficult stuff without a rope, 2,000 feet off the ground. And I was really like, I remember watching him a few years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and be like, whoa, like I want to climb like that. That's better climbing. Like in my head, it triggered as like, oh, he's a way better rock climber the way that he climbs, as opposed to like, and I think there's definitely a middle ground, and I think you do need to be able to, like Chris Sharma is maybe one of the other strongest climbers in the world, and he's explosive. He jumps, cuts his feet. I mean, but it works for him.
Yeah.
And he can climb statically as well, but Honnold just climbs in a way that I started to think about that more. And so over the last 5 years, I've climbed more. I'll try and instead of jumping out to a hold, I'll try and lock it in and go as slow as I can.
Yeah.
And do what I think you're describing.
A little more methodical, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And I think ultimately you do get stronger. Because when you're just like throwing to the next hold, it requires a lot of contact strength, and you need to be able to reel it in, and your core needs to be able to engage. But when you're moving slowly, you're moving like, just to keep this example, like you're moving all the way out, you're keeping this tension. We talk about tension a lot in climbing. And so the more you can keep your tension kind of in between moves, for training purposes, typically that's better. Like you're going to learn a lot, you're going to get stronger, you're going to expend less energy. You're going to keep your hips closer into the wall, especially like if the feet are bad. Like sometimes once you cut your feet, you're off the wall, you know?
Yeah.
Because maybe your hold, like especially on a steep section.
Yeah.
So you need to keep your feet like pushing down, and you need to move up real slow. That's So it's definitely a trade-off all the time.
Yeah, and I there's definitely a lot of times whenever, like if I'm conscious of that and I try to make a move slower and like kind of put more pressure on my feet against the wall or something, like I'll be able to reach something that before, I don't know, just like a little adjustment.
Yeah, I think what you just said is not that this is like a Paul gives advice tutorial, but I think something that I've been trying to, remind myself of even when I'm climbing is focusing on my feet more. I have this in my head. It's like your brain and your hands are so connected. You play guitar, like drums, like your hands know what they're doing when you're not even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily true with your feet, I think, especially on climbing, like when it's really precise.
Yeah.
Like when I'm going for a run, sure, my feet are just kind of clopping along.
Oh, but
I'm also not a runner. Yeah. So I try and think about my feet. You can't think about everything when you're climbing. You can't think about every single thing at the same time. But if you're driving with your feet, I just have this, it's like my hands know what to do. My hands are just they're going to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. I trust my hands. I don't trust my feet though. And you'll yell that, trust your feet, like, watch your feet. Like that's a thing that climbers say. It's like, it might not be a big foot. It might be a foot or it might just be, like you said, a lot of times you're like, oh, I can't reach that hold. And there are definitely climbs where you are too short to reach the next hold. And you need alternative beta. But I think a lot of times people say that, and it's really just not true. One of my friends, Tom, is a short dude with a negative ape index, and he crushes rocks. Like he knows how to rock climb. He knows how to do it where he keeps his feet down, he drives in, he keeps his hips up, he drives it down. All of a sudden, he's climbing like he's 6 foot. And I think what happens a lot, and what you just described, is you go for the hold. And before you even get to it, your foot comes off.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, I couldn't reach it. Or like, I fell, I couldn't grab the hold. And it's like, no, you took your foot off before. So if you can just drive, hit it, you might just be able to keep it. And then everything stays together,
Yeah, I feel like those are difficult moments, but they're cool whenever you kind of are able to do that. But sometimes it's like you really have to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Which is... Yeah, how do you like work on footwork? You just try and think about it more as you're climbing, or like?
Yeah, I think so. I was going to mention this earlier too, but so I'll come back to it. Another kind of like a piece of advice I have for myself and for everybody is to try and, when you see a really good climber climbing, it's like their feet are hands. Like they're pulling like a dancer, like a ballet, like whether it's a toe or whether it's a heel, they're climbing with like their lower half of their body. And I know a lot of people say that, well, like climbing's not all about your arms, it's more about your legs. And it's definitely like about both for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I used to think that was more just like about straight up and down pushing, like, you're driving with your legs. But the more I climb, the more difficult things I climb on steeper terrain, especially, or even on not so steep terrain, the more tension you can keep in your lower half, in not just up and down tension, but kind of like pulling yourself into the wall. I feel like that's just definitely something it's hard to like talk about. It's something you just have to kind of like do and more like internalize, but it definitely starts to make a difference. You see people just climbing almost like literally like a monkey, where they grab a hold with their foot and they're not just like pulling their body in, like their leg is pulling their body in, and then their hands are like reaching up casually. It is kind of like a different way to look at it. And you could see someone climb the same climb, like maybe with those two different, and there are different training drills too, where you can kind of say, okay, climb this way, climb the same climb and climb it this way.
Yeah.
And it might be like driving with your feet, or one of them is like called, or like barely touching with your feet. Like there's a couple different ways to do it. One of them is, that I like to do is pick a route, climb it, then climb it by keeping your feet and your hands as far away as possible the whole time. So like always try and be as outstretched as you can.
Ooh, sounds tough.
It's tough. And then the other way is try and be as scrunched up as possible. Sometimes even putting your feet above your hands, like trying to just, so you climb the same route, but you just start to teach yourself where those kind of failure points are. You're like, oh, it gets really hard if my feet are really far apart. Or sometimes I think a lot of new climbers tend to put their feet too high. They'll step up too much, and then all of a sudden they're stuck. And then if they're gonna think about removing their hand, they're gonna explode off the wall, when really they could have just like kept their foot down and just been like a ladder,
Yeah.
So yeah, your feet are way important.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to start working on that.
Yeah. It's not just your feet. Like the way that Brian, my friend told me, we were talking about core one day, and he's like, your core isn't just here. It's not just your back core and your low core and your mid core. For climbing, he said, and I've thought about this ever since, like your core is everything that's in between your toe and your fingertips on the wall. You have this band of tension. And so if you can keep that whole core tight, it's going to be easier. You're going to be able to get through it more. The more that your band kind of sags a little bit.
Yeah. There's plenty being floppy.
Yeah.
I'm definitely working on being less floppy.
Yeah, that's everyone's goal, I think.
Flop around less. I drank a lot of coffee this morning. Kind of have to go to the bathroom.
All right.
It's been an hour and a half.
Wrapping it up. Cool.
I feel like, thank you for taking an extra half hour to talk about climbing.
No worries.
All that stuff.
Yeah, I wish we could have talked about it more, but maybe another one someday.
We could do
Part 2.
one, yeah.
No, yeah, it's been really fun. I'm glad we got to talk about music too. I was like, I hope we get to talk about music because that's another thing.
Glad you shared all that information.
Yeah, and it's always good. Yeah, it's cool to see the where it all comes from, the magic.
Oh yeah,
of Chalk Dinosaur.
This is where the magic happens. Some of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you come out with next. And
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
working on it. Working on a couple things.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yep, Paul, Ascend. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So that was Paul Guarino of Ascend, the rock climbing gym in the south side of Pittsburgh. Before I close here, just wanted to make an announcement that the next Chalk Dinosaur show is going to be a full band show on March 26th at the Thunderbird. And this will be our first headlining set there. And if you're interested, you can find tickets and information on the Facebook event. If you just search for Chalk Dinosaur Thunderbird, you'll see the March 26th show. So thank you all for listening, and it's Monday, so have a great week. I don't know what day this will air, but probably Wednesday or something. So have a great week or have a great weekend, whatever is most appropriate at your time of listening. And okay, see you later.